Ever been so proud, so excited for a moment you truly earned, only to have someone try and snatch that joy away with pure contempt? That's exactly what happened when a brilliant young black woman, holding a first-class ticket she'd won, stepped up to the boarding gate. Instead of congratulations, she faced scorn, laughter, and public humiliation from an airline agent. But that agent made one monumental miscalculation, underestimating not just the girl, but the powerful force about to step into the picture. Her mother, an executive VP at that very airline. Prepare for a showdown where karma punches the clock hard. The crisp, freshly printed sleeve of her first-class ticket felt like a golden passport in Keisha Washington's hand. At 17, she wasn't just flying, she was ascending. This trip to London wasn't merely a vacation, it was the grand prize for winning the National Youth Innovators Challenge, a prestigious STEM competition that came with a hefty scholarship and this around-trip first-class ticket on Global Skyways Airlines to attend a summer program at Imperial College, London. Her heart hammered a rhythm against her ribs that echoed the vibrant, chaotic energy of Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. Terminal 4 buzzed around her, a symphony of rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and multilingual announcements. Keisha clutched her carry-on, a sleek backpack that held her laptop, a notebook filled with coding ideas, and a well-loved copy of Hidden Figures. She'd triple-checked her gate, 42B, and the departure time. Everything was perfect. Her mother, Dr. Eleanor Vance, had wanted to see her off, but a last-minute emergency board meeting for the company she worked for had made it impossible. "You've got this, sweetie," Eleanor had said over FaceTime that morning, her voice warm with pride. "You're strong, you're brilliant, and you deserve every bit of this. Text me when you're at the gate, and then again when you land." Okay. Keisha had promised her spirit soaring. First class. She'd only ever seen it in movies. The wide, plush seats that looked like futuristic pods. The attentive flight attendants. The promise of actual edible food. For a girl from Crenshaw, who'd poured her soul into circuit boards and algorithms, this was more than just a comfortable flight. It was a symbol. A symbol that she, Keisha Washington, belonged in spaces she'd once only dreamed of. She approached the boarding area for flight GS710 to London Heathrow. The sign for priority boarding, first class, business class, platinum elite members, stood like a velvet rope to a world of exclusivity. Keisha took a deep breath, her smile irrepressible, and walked towards the podium, where 2 gate agents were stationed. One agent, a man with a tired but polite smile, was busy with a family. The other, a woman whose name tag read Brenda, had a pinched expression. Her lips pursed as she scanned the screen of her computer. She had a tight, brassy blonde perm that seemed to defy gravity and wore a shade of coral lipstick that clashed spectacularly with her navy uniform. Keisha waited patiently. When Brenda finally looked up, her eyes, a startling shade of pale blue, flicked over Keisha with an expression that could only be described as dismissive. "Yes." Brenda's voice was sharp, impatient. "Good morning, Keisha," said, offering her most polite smile. "I'm checking in for flight GS710 to London." She extended her ticket and passport. Brenda took them without a word, her eyes lingering on Keisha's face for a fraction of a second too long. Keisha felt a familiar prickle of unease, the kind she'd experienced countless times when stepping into predominantly white spaces, but she pushed it down. Today was too special to be marred by someone else's assumptions. Brenda's fingers tapped on the keyboard with an aggressive rhythm. Then she looked at the ticket, then back at Keisha. A small, unpleasant smile tugged at the corner of her coral lips. "First class, huh?" Brenda said, her voice loud enough for the people in the priority line behind Keisha to hear. Keisha's own smile wavered. "Yes, that's right." Brenda let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was laced with disbelief and a clear, cutting derision. "That's a good one, honey. Did you get lost? Economy boarding for London hasn't started yet. And even then you'd be in Zone 5, I reckon." The heat rushed to Keisha's face. Her stomach twisted. "Excuse me. This is my ticket. It's first class." Her voice was firmer than she felt. Brenda held the ticket up, waving it dismissively. "Oh, I see the little F here. Cute. Where'd you get this, sweetie? Did you pick it up off the floor? Maybe your daddy works for the airline cleaning crew and snagged an old one." Her laugh was louder this time, and a few people in the line tittered uncomfortably. Keisha's blood ran cold, then hot with a furious indignation. "My father is a history professor, and I won this ticket. It's perfectly valid." "Won it," Brenda drawled, drawing out the word as if it were the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. She leaned forward conspiratorially, her voice still carrying. "Look, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know who flies first class. And with all due respect, honey," she scanned Keisha from her sneakers to her neat braids lingering on her dark skin, "you don't exactly fit the profile." Humiliation, raw and stinging, washed over Keisha. Every eye in the vicinity seemed to be on her. She could feel the weight of their stares, their judgment fueled by Brenda's blatant prejudice. Her carefully constructed composure began to crumble. "There must be some mistake on your part," Keisha insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you please just scan it? You'll see it's legitimate." Brenda rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, I'll scan it all right." She snatched the ticket and slammed it onto the scanner. The machine beeped affirmatively. A flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossed Brenda's face before she quickly masked it. "Well, what do you know?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It actually scanned. Guess they're letting anyone up front these days." She didn't stop there. As she handed the ticket back, her eyes narrowed. "But I'm still not convinced. This could be a very good forgery. Or maybe you're traveling with someone who actually belongs up there, and you're just... there, you know. Assistant." The word assistant hung in the air, heavy with insinuation. Keisha felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, and she fought them back fiercely. She would not cry. She would not give this woman the satisfaction. "I am traveling alone," Keisha said, her voice low and tight. "And I belong in first class just as much as anyone else with a valid ticket. Are you going to let me board, or are you going to continue to harass me?" The challenge in Keisha's tone seemed to further incense Brenda. "Harass you," she scoffed. "I'm doing my job, ensuring the security and legitimacy of our premium cabins. We can't just have anyone wandering in. Perhaps I should call airport security to verify your credentials." She reached for the phone on the counter, her eyes glinting with a malicious triumph. Panic flared in Keisha's chest. Airport security. For what? For being a black girl with a first-class ticket. The injustice of it was a physical blow. She felt small, exposed, and utterly alone. The dream of London of her achievement was rapidly souring into a public spectacle of prejudice. "There's no need for security," Keisha pleaded, her voice now laced with desperation. "My ticket is real. My name is Keisha Washington. Please just check your system properly." Brenda paused, her hand hovering over the phone. Keisha Washington, she mused, tapping the name into her computer again, then looking back at the ticket. A smirk played on her lips. Doesn't ring any bells. No special notes, no alerts for a VIP of that name. Funny, isn't it? The line behind Keisha was growing longer, the murmurs louder. Some looked sympathetic, others annoyed at the delay, and a few Keisha noted with a sinking heart seemed to be enjoying the show, their faces reflecting Brenda's own smugness. This wasn't just bad customer service. This was a deliberate, targeted humiliation. And Brenda was relishing every moment. Keisha felt a wave of despair. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "You're strong. You're brilliant." But right now, she didn't feel strong or brilliant. She felt like a target. Taking a shaky breath, she pulled out her phone. I need to make a call," she whispered, stepping slightly away from the podium, her hands trembling too much to dial properly at first. Brenda watched her, a condescending smirk firmly in place. "Oh, calling for backup, are we? Who's it going to be? Your mummy?" Keisha's finger finally found the contact for Mum. As the phone began to ring, she prayed her mother wasn't still in that crucial board meeting. The humiliation was complete. The dream had been publicly, cruelly annihilated at Gate 42B. The ringing in Keisha's ear seemed to stretch for an eternity, each tone amplifying the thudding of her own heart. Brenda watched her with undisguised contempt, one perfectly plucked eyebrow arched. The other gate agent the man occasionally glanced over, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes, but he remained occupied with his own cue, seemingly unwilling or unable to intervene. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, and Keisha's mounting desperation. "Is she going to pick up?" Brenda taunted, her voice a low, malicious drawl. Or is she too busy? Cleaning the executive lounge toilets. Keisha squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, trying to block out the venom. Don't react, she told herself. Just get Mom. Then a click. "Keisha, sweetie. Are you at the gate? Is everything okay?" "Eleanor." Vance's voice, usually so calm and assured, now held a note of maternal concern. She must have sensed something in the way the call connected, or perhaps it was just a mother's intuition. Tears finally welled, blurring Keisha's vision. "Mom," she choked out, her voice thick with unshed emotion. I'm at the gate, Gate 42B. But there's a problem. A problem. What kind of problem? Did you lose something? Is the flight delayed?" "No, Mom. It's the gate agent." Keisha risked a glance at Brenda, who was now pretending to file her nails, though her smirk remained. She doesn't believe my ticket is real. She said I don't fit the profile for first class. She's been really awful, Mum. She threatened to call security. There was a sudden, sharp silence on the other end of the line. Keisha could almost hear the gears shifting in her mother's mind from concerned parent to something else, something formidable. When Eleanor spoke again, her voice had lost all its previous warmth. It was replaced by a chillingly calm, incisive tone that Keisha knew meant business. "What is her name? Keisha Brenda?" Keisha whispered, glancing at the name tag again to be sure. "Her name is Brenda." "All right, Keisha. Listen to me very carefully. I want you to put your phone on speaker. Hold it up so Brenda can hear me. Don't say anything else to her. just let her hear my voice. Can you do that?" Keisha nodded, though her mother couldn't see. "Yes, Mom." She fumbled with the speakerphone button, her hand still shaking. She took a deep breath and turned back towards the podium, holding the phone out. Brenda looked up, annoyance flashing across her face. "Still on the phone. Some people are trying to board, you know. If you don't have a valid reason to be here." "Brenda." "Eleanor." Vance's voice cut through the air, crisp and authoritative, amplified by the phone's speaker. It wasn't loud, but it carried an unmistakable weight that made Brenda visibly startle. Even the passengers nearby quieted, sensing a shift in the drama. Brenda's smirk faltered. "Who is this?" she demanded, her gaze flicking from Keisha to the phone. "My name is Dr. Eleanor Vance." The voice from the phone stated each word delivered with precision. "I am Keisha Washington's mother. I am also, as it happens, the Executive Vice President of Global Customer Experience for Global Skyways Airlines, the very airline you are currently representing so poorly." The color drained from Brenda's face. Her coral lipstick suddenly looked garish against her now pale skin. The hand that had been feigning nail filing froze mid-air. Her eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning horror darted towards Keisha, then back to the phone as if it might physically strike her. I beg your pardon." Brenda stammered, her previous arrogance vanishing like smoke. "There will be plenty of time for pardons later. Brenda, though I suspect you'll be begging for more than that." Dr. Vance continued, her voice like ice. "I understand you've questioned the validity of my daughter's first-class ticket, that you've suggested she acquired it through illicit means, that you've publicly humiliated her and threatened her with security, all apparently based on your personal assessment that she doesn't fit the profile. Is this an accurate summary of your conduct this morning?" Brenda opened her mouth, then closed it again. A strangled squeak was the only sound she managed. The other gate agent had now stopped his work, entirely staring openly at the unfolding scene. Passengers in both lines were rapt, their earlier impatience replaced with wide-eyed fascination. "I want you to take Keisha's ticket and passport right now." "Brenda." Dr. Vance instructed her tone, leaving no room for argument. "I want you to process her boarding pass for seat 2A, ensure her carry-on is tagged appropriately, if needed, and then I want you to offer her your sincerest, most profound apology for your unprofessional and discriminatory behavior. You will do this immediately. Am I understood?" Brenda, seemingly paralyzed, could only nod mutely, her eyes still fixed on the phone in Keisha's hand. Verbally, Brenda. "Yes, Dr. Vance will suffice." "Yes, Dr. Vance." Brenda managed to whisper, her voice hoarse. "Good. Now I am currently in a board meeting at our corporate headquarters, not 10 miles from your location. I was in fact discussing new initiatives to combat precisely this kind of unacceptable passenger profiling. Consider this your practical demonstration of why such initiatives are so desperately needed. My driver is downstairs. I estimate I will be at gate 42B in approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Do not under any circumstances leave your station. Do not attempt to involve your local station manager just yet. I will handle that communication personally. You and I, Brenda, are going to have a very thorough discussion when I arrive. In the meantime, ensure my daughter is treated with the respect any first-class passenger deserves. Is that perfectly clear?" "Yes, Dr. Vance." Perfectly." Brenda stuttered, her face now a mask of terror. "Keisha, sweetie." Eleanor's voice softened fractionally. "Give the phone back to Brenda if she needs to confirm anything on her screen with me. Otherwise, just keep me on speaker until you have your boarding pass in hand. I'll stay on the line." Keisha, still reeling from the sudden turn of events, watched as Brenda with trembling hands took her ticket and passport. This time her fingers flew across the keyboard with frantic speed. The confident sneer was gone, replaced by a desperate urgency. The earlier dismissive wave of the ticket was now a careful, almost reverent handling. The machine beeped. The boarding pass printed. Brenda fumbled with it, nearly dropping it. She affixed a priority tag to Keisha's backpack with shaky fingers. "Throughout it all, Doctor," Vance's voice remained a calm, steely presence from the phone's speaker, occasionally asking a pointed question about procedure that Brenda answered in monosyllables. Finally, Brenda held out the boarding pass and Keisha's documents. Her eyes, which had previously held such scorn, were now filled with a desperate, pleading look. Miss Washington," she began, her voice cracking. I am so incredibly sorry. I made a terrible mistake. A horrible, inexcusable lapse in judgment. Please accept my deepest apologies." Her apology was a torrent of words lacking the grace of sincerity, but drenched in the unmistakable panic of someone who knew they were in very deep trouble. Keisha numbly took her documents. The victory felt hollow, tainted by the venom that had preceded it. She looked at Brenda, this woman who had wielded her petty power with such cruelty, now reduced to a stammering wreck. There was no triumph in seeing her fear, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. "I'll be there shortly," Keisha Dr. Vance said from the phone. "Find a comfortable seat in the lounge. I'll meet you there." "Okay, Mom," Keisha said softly, then disconnected the call. The silence that descended on Gate 42B was thick and heavy. Brenda stood frozen, her face ashen. The other agent looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. The passengers were whispering, their eyes darting between Keisha and Brenda. Keisha simply nodded, turned and walked towards the entrance of the Global Skyways first-class lounge. The boarding pass for seat 2A clutched tightly in her hand. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The storm her mother had promised was gathering, and its arrival was imminent. The Global Skyways first-class lounge at LAX was an oasis of calm compared to the cacophony of the main terminal. Soft lighting, plush armchairs, the gentle clinking of glasses, and the hushed tones of privileged conversation usually created an atmosphere of serene exclusivity. But for Keisha, the tranquility felt alien, almost mocking. She found a seat in a relatively secluded corner overlooking the tarmac, where colossal jets gracefully taxied. She should have been thrilled, sipping orange juice and anticipating her flight. But her stomach was still in knots, the residue of Brenda's venom clinging to her like a toxic film. She replayed the encounter in her mind. Brenda's sneering face, the laughter, the public dissection of her worth based on the color of her skin and her youthful appearance. The swift intervention of her mother had been like a deus ex machina, a sudden powerful reversal of fortune. But the wound, the initial cut, was still fresh. It wasn't just about a first-class seat. It was about dignity, respect, and the wearying, relentless battle against prejudice that she and so many like her had to fight every day. Less than 20 minutes later, as promised, a figure of composed authority walked into the lounge. Dr. Eleanor Vance was a woman who commanded attention without demanding it. Tall and elegant, in a sharply tailored navy blue suit that spoke of boardrooms and executive power. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes scanning the lounge until they found Keisha. As Eleanor approached the lounge manager, a flustered man named Mr. Henderson, who had clearly been alerted to her impending arrival, and likely the reason for it, scurried over. "Dr. Vance, welcome. Can I get you anything?" "We weren't expecting." Eleanor offered a brief, polite nod, but her focus was on her daughter. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Perhaps later. Right now, I need a moment with my daughter." She dismissed him gently but firmly. She sat opposite Keisha, her handbag clicking softly on the glass table. "Are you all right, baby?" she asked, her voice now infused with the warmth Keisha knew so well. Keisha managed a weak smile. "Shaken, but okay. Thanks for that, Mom. It was intense." Eleanor reached across and took Keisha's hand. "No mother wants to make that kind of call, Keisha. But no daughter should ever have to endure what you endured. I am so sorry that this happened to you, that it happened on my airline." There was a fierce protective anger in her eyes, now mingling with the maternal concern. "This isn't just about you being my daughter. This is about any passenger, any human being treated with basic decency and respect. What Brenda did was not just unprofessional. It was discriminatory, it was cruel, and it reflects a cancer within the system that I am determined to cut out." Just then, a junior lounge attendant approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, Dr. Vance, Mr. Henderson sent me," he said. "Gate agent Brenda Jenkins and the duty shift manager, Mr. Davies, are waiting outside the lounge. They were instructed to meet you here." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Thank you. Tell Mr. Henderson I'll see them in the small conference room adjacent to the lounge in 5 minutes. And please arrange for some tea for my daughter, and a double espresso for me." As the attendant hurried away, Eleanor squeezed Keisha's hand. "You don't have to be part of this next bit unless you want to be, sweetie. You can relax here, board your flight when it's called. I can handle Brenda and her supervisor." Keisha thought for a moment. Part of her wanted to shrink away to forget the whole ugly incident. But another part, the part that had coded late into the night, that had faced down skeptical judges in science fairs, that had earned her place on that plane, wanted to see this through. "No, Mom," she said, straightening her shoulders. "I want to be there. I don't want to say anything necessarily, but I want to be there." Eleanor studied her daughter's face, saw the quiet resolve, and nodded slowly. "All right. But you let me do the talking. And if it becomes too much, you just give me a look, and we step out." A few minutes later, Keisha sat beside her mother in a small, sterile meeting room. Brenda Jenkins and a harried-looking man in a slightly rumpled suit, presumably Mr. Davies, stood awkwardly before them. Brenda looked even worse than she had at the gate. Her makeup seemed to be streaking, her eyes were red-rimmed, and she couldn't meet Keisha's gaze, or Eleanor's. Mr. Davies kept wringing his hands. "Mr. Davies, I am Dr. Eleanor Vance, EVP, of Global Customer Experience." Eleanor began, her voice level and devoid of emotion. "I believe you're the duty shift manager for this sector." "Yes, Dr. Vance." Alan Davies." "It's an honor," he stammered, visibly intimidated. "I assure you, Mr. Davies, the circumstances of our meeting are anything but honorable," Eleanor countered coolly. "Miss Jenkins," she said, her gaze shifting to Brenda, who flinched. "Before we proceed, I want to offer you one final opportunity to explain your actions this morning towards my daughter, Keisha Washington, and I want you to understand that your continued employment with Global Skyways likely hangs on the honesty and insight of your response." Brenda swallowed hard. Her voice, when it came, was a shaky whisper. "Dr. Vance? Miss Washington? I don't know what to say. I was wrong. So wrong. I saw a young person, and I made assumptions. Horrible, unfair assumptions. I was stressed. We were short-staffed, but that's no excuse, none at all. I was unprofessional. I was cruel, and I am truly deeply ashamed and sorry for the distress I caused." She looked pleadingly at Keisha, then quickly away, as if the sight of the young woman she had tormented was too much to bear. Mr. Davies chimed in, "Dr. Vance, I can assure you that this is not representative of Global Skyways standards. Brenda has been with us for many years, and while there have been minor complaints, nothing of this magnitude." Eleanor held up a hand, silencing him. "Minor complaints, Mr. Davies. We'll get to those. For now, let's focus on Ms. Jenkins. So your defense, Ms. Jenkins, is that you were stressed and you made assumptions. You didn't just make assumptions. You publicly accused a passenger of potential fraud. You mocked her. You attempted to deny her rightful access to a service she, or in this case her sponsor, paid a significant amount of money for. You belittled her based on her appearance, and let's be frank, her race. Did you at any point consider the possibility that a young black woman could legitimately be a first-class passenger? Brenda shook her head miserably. I guess not. Not really. And that's the horrible truth. I didn't think, I just reacted to my own biases. It was a stark admission wrung from her by the sheer weight of her predicament. Your biases, Eleanor repeated softly, letting the words hang in the air. At least you're admitting to them. That's a start, however belated. She looked at Mr. Davies. Ms. Jenkins is hereby suspended from all duties, effective immediately pending a full investigation. You will escort her from airport property once we are concluded here. Her access credentials are to be revoked. Is that understood? Yes, Dr. Vance. Absolutely, Mr. Davies replied, paling slightly. Brenda Eleanor said, her voice softening almost imperceptibly, though the steel remained. You will be contacted by Human Resources within 24 hours regarding the terms of your suspension and the details of the investigation. I strongly advise you to cooperate fully, and I suggest you use this time to reflect very deeply on your conduct, your biases, and the considerable damage you have inflicted today. On Miss Washington, on this airline's reputation, and on your own career. Brenda nodded, tears now openly streaming down her face. She looked broken, a shadow of the imperious, sneering agent from an hour ago. Eleanor stood. Keisha, let's get you comfortably settled for your flight. Mr. Davies, I will be in touch with your direct supervisor, Ms. Carmichael, and with LAX Station Director, Mr. Peterson, later today. I expect a full report on Ms. Jenkins's employment history, including any and all passenger complaints, however minor, on my desk by end of day tomorrow. Yes, Dr. Vance Davies repeated, looking like he wished he were anywhere else. Eleanor placed a supportive hand on Keisha's back and guided her out of the small room, leaving Brenda and Mr. Davies in a stunned, uncomfortable silence. Back in the main lounge, Eleanor ensured Keisha was given a prime seat. Her tea was refreshed, and that she had everything she needed. The flight will be boarding soon, she said gently. I've already spoken to the cabin supervisor. They're aware of the situation and will ensure you have an exceptionally comfortable and respectful flight. No fuss, just good service, the kind you should have expected from the start. Keisha nodded, still processing the whirlwind. What will happen to her? Mom. Eleanor sighed, her executive mask momentarily slipping to reveal a hint of weariness. Honestly, Keisha, I don't know for sure. There will be an investigation. If this is a first-time major offense, and if she shows genuine remorse and a willingness to undergo significant retraining and counseling, there's a slim chance she might eventually be reassigned to a role with no passenger contact. But if, as I suspect, Mr. Davies's comment about minor complaints is an understatement, and we find a pattern of discriminatory behavior, then termination is the most likely outcome. And frankly, the right one. She paused, then added, "This isn't about revenge, Keisha. This is about accountability. It's about ensuring that Global Skyways is a place where everyone feels welcome and respected, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, or what class of ticket they hold. What happened to you today was a system failure, and I intend to fix it." The boarding announcement for flight GS710 to London echoed through the lounge. Keisha stood up, her backpack feeling a little lighter. "Thank you, Mom. For everything." Eleanor hugged her tightly. "You go have an amazing time in London. Show them how brilliant you are. And don't let this one hateful person dim your shine. You are stronger than her prejudice." As Keisha walked towards the boarding gate, a different agent was now manning the priority lane, smiling warmly. She couldn't help but feel a profound shift. The humiliation was still a raw memory, but it was now overlaid with the fierce, unwavering support of her mother and the dawning realization that sometimes, just sometimes, the system could be forced to confront its own ugliness. The storm had arrived, and the cleanup was just beginning. Keisha's flight to London was, as her mother had promised, exceptionally comfortable. The cabin supervisor, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, greeted her with a genuine smile and discreetly ensured her every need was met. There was no overt fuss, no special announcements, just the seamless, respectful service that should have been standard. Yet Keisha couldn't fully relax. The encounter at the gate replayed in her mind, a dissonant chord in the symphony of her otherwise exciting journey. She found herself observing the other first-class passengers, wondering if Brenda would have profiled them too, or if her venom was reserved for those who didn't fit a narrow, prejudiced mold. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, the gears of corporate machinery were grinding into motion, powered by the incisive will of Dr. Eleanor Vance. True to her word, she didn't just let the matter rest with Brenda's suspension. She saw this as a symptom of a larger malaise, and she was determined to diagnose the full extent of the illness. By the next morning, a preliminary report on Brenda Jenkins landed on Eleanor's desk, a sleek glass surface in her expansive office at Global Skyways HQ. It made for grim reading. Mr. Davies's attempt to downplay previous issues as minor complaints was, as Eleanor had suspected, a gross understatement. Over her 15-year tenure, Brenda Jenkins had accumulated a disturbing number of passenger complaints. They weren't all overtly about racial discrimination. Some cited rudeness, unhelpfulness, an aggressive demeanor, or a generally condescending attitude. However, a pattern emerged when the demographics of the complainants were analyzed by the HR analytics team Eleanor had tasked with this deep dive. A disproportionate number of the more serious complaints, those alleging disrespectful or overtly hostile treatment, came from passengers of color. Passengers with accents or younger travelers in premium cabins who Brenda perhaps felt hadn't earned their place. There were notes from previous supervisors: Brenda needs to work on her customer-facing tone. Brenda can be abrupt. Brenda struggles with de-escalation. Each comment was followed by a record of a perfunctory verbal warning or a mandatory online refresher course on customer service excellence. Courses Brenda had evidently clicked through without absorbing an iota of their intended lessons. "This is appalling, Peterson." Eleanor said, her voice tight, speaking to Mark Peterson, the LAX station director, via video conference. Alan Davies, looking even more stressed than the day before, was also on the call, along with Davies's direct supervisor, Maria Carmichael, who appeared mortified. "Eleanor, why?" "I am shocked," Peterson stammered, a man who usually exuded unflappable calm, now visibly rattled. "These details, many of these specific complaints weren't escalated to my level. They were handled, or rather mishandled, at a lower supervisory tier. And that Mark is precisely the problem," Eleanor stated, her gaze unwavering. "A systemic failure to address a clear pattern of escalating misconduct. Miss Jenkins wasn't just having a bad day when she accosted my daughter. She was emboldened by years of inadequate supervision and a culture that seemingly tolerated her behavior as long as the planes departed on time." Maria Carmichael finally spoke, her voice strained. "Dr. Vance, I take full responsibility for the failures within my team. Mr. Davies should have flagged the severity and frequency of these complaints to me much earlier, and I should have been more proactive in auditing the complaint logs." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Accountability will indeed be assigned, Ms. Carmichael, but first let's deal with Ms. Jenkins. Is she cooperating?" Alan Davies cleared his throat. She provided a written statement. It's full of apologies, claims of stress, personal problems. She's requested a formal hearing with HR and her union representative. She's also asking if she can write a personal letter of apology to your daughter." Eleanor's expression remained stern. "A letter to Keisha is out of the question. My daughter is not a part of this internal disciplinary process, beyond being the catalyst who finally brought Ms. Jenkins's unsuitability to light. As for the hearing, she is entitled to it. But the evidence here is overwhelming. The investigation team also pulled CCTV footage from Gate 42B. The video, even without audio, was damning. It showed Brenda's dismissive gestures, her aggressive posture, Keisha's visible distress, and the gate agent's clear enjoyment of the confrontation right up until the moment Keisha made the phone call. Then the footage captured Brenda's dramatic shift in demeanor, her shock and her subsequent panicked fumbling. But the investigation unearthed something even more concerning. During a more thorough audit of Brenda's employment records, a discrepancy was found in her initial application from 15 years ago. She had claimed an associate's degree in travel and tourism from a community college that, upon further deeper inquiry by the HR investigators, had no record of her ever graduating or even attending beyond a single semester. She had, it appeared, embellished her qualifications to secure the job in the first place. So not only do we have a pattern of abusive behavior towards passengers, Eleanor summarized in a follow-up meeting with legal and HR, but we also have potential resume fraud. This significantly changes the landscape of her defense, if any. Brenda Jenkins, meanwhile, was falling apart. The suspension had been a shock. The depth of the investigation was terrifying. Her union representative, a weary but dutiful man named Frank, listened to her tearful, often incoherent explanations. "They're trying to make an example of me because her mom's a VP," Brenda wailed during one call. "It's not fair. Yes, I messed up. I was out of line. But to lose my job over one mistake." Frank sighed. "Brenda, from what they're telling me, this isn't about one mistake. They're talking about a pattern, and they've found something about your qualifications." When Frank explained the issue with her claimed degree, Brenda became hysterical. "That was years ago. It doesn't matter. I've done my job for 15 years. It does matter. Brenda, Frank said gravely. It speaks to integrity. If you were dishonest, then it makes it harder for them to trust anything you say now. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling. Her bravado, her sense of superiority that she wielded like a weapon at the gate was gone, replaced by a gnawing fear. She thought of her mortgage, her car payments, the life she had built, however precariously, on the foundation of her job at Global Skyways. The job that gave her a small measure of power she had clearly catastrophically abused. She tried to rally support from colleagues. Some offered lukewarm sympathy, but most kept their distance, fearful of being tainted by association. The story of the gate agent who insulted the VP's daughter was spreading like wildfire through the airline's employee grapevine, morphing with each retelling, but always with Brenda as the clear villain. Desperate, Brenda even considered reaching out to Keisha directly, perhaps finding her on social media, a misguided attempt at a personal appeal. But her union rep had strongly advised against it. You'll only make things worse, Brenda. Much worse. The formal hearing was scheduled. Brenda knew with a sickening certainty that she was walking into a predetermined outcome. The airline wasn't just looking at her actions towards Keisha. They were looking at her entire history, her very suitability to wear the Global Skyways uniform. The minor complaints she had shrugged off for years, the passengers she had dismissed and belittled, were all coming back to haunt her, their collective grievances, forming a tidal wave of evidence against her. Eleanor Vance, for her part, ensured the investigation was thorough and by the book. She wanted no accusations of a vindictive witch hunt. The facts she knew spoke for themselves. She was also spearheading a task force to review and overhaul the airline's customer service training complaint, handling procedures, and DEI diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Keisha's experience was to be a catalyst for real, lasting change. The unraveling of Brenda Jenkins was not swift, but it was inexorable. Each uncovered detail, each past complaint, given new scrutiny, added another nail to the coffin of her career at Global Skyways. The laughter she had directed at Keisha Washington at Gate 42B had set in motion a chain of events that was stripping away her defenses layer by painful layer, exposing the unprofessionalism and prejudice that lay beneath her coral lipstick and brassy perm. The day of Brenda Jenkins's formal disciplinary hearing was overcast and grey. The sky outside the Global Skyways Administrative Building near LAX, mirroring the bleakness of her prospects. She sat opposite a panel consisting of a senior HR manager, the LAX station director, Mark Peterson, who looked profoundly uncomfortable, a representative from the legal department, and to Brenda's utter dismay, Dr. Eleanor Vance herself. Eleanor wasn't there to intimidate, but to observe, to ensure the process was handled correctly, and to represent the commitment of senior leadership to addressing such egregious breaches. Her presence alone underscored the gravity of the situation. Frank, her union rep, sat beside Brenda, his expression stoic. The HR manager, a meticulously professional woman named Ms. Albright, began by laying out the findings of the investigation. The detailed account of the incident with Keisha Washington, supported by CCTV footage and witness statements from other passengers who had been in line. The extensive history of prior customer complaints, many of which showed a clear pattern of disrespect and discriminatory assumptions. And finally, the discrepancy concerning her claimed educational qualifications. Ms. Jenkins, Ms. Albright, said, her tone neutral but firm. This panel has reviewed all the evidence, including your written statement and the arguments made by your union representative. The findings paint a picture of an employee who has repeatedly failed to meet the standards of professionalism, respect, and integrity expected by global skyways. The incident involving Miss Washington was not an isolated lapse in judgment, but rather the culmination of a long-standing pattern of unacceptable behavior. Furthermore, the misrepresentation of your qualifications on your initial application calls into question your honesty from the outset of your employment. Brenda attempted to speak, her voice hoarse. I know I made mistakes. I've been under a lot of stress, personal issues. I'm willing to do anything. Retraining, anger management, diversity counseling, anything. Please, this job is all I have. Her plea was raw, stripped of any artifice. The fear that had been her constant companion for days was now a palpable force in the room. Frank, her rep, did his best. He argued for mitigation, citing her 15 years of service, though this was somewhat undermined by the falsified application, the pressures of the job, and her current remorse. He emphasized her willingness to undergo remedial training. Dr. Vance listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When Frank had finished, Ms. Albright looked towards Eleanor, a silent inquiry. Eleanor gave a slight nod. Ms. Albright then delivered the verdict. Ms. Jenkins, considering the severity of the incident on May 31st, the established pattern of misconduct, and the serious issue of resume fraud, the panel has unanimously concluded that your actions constitute gross misconduct. Therefore, Global Skyways is terminating your employment effective immediately. The words hung in the air. Terminating your employment? Brenda felt the floor drop out from beneath her. It was the outcome she had dreaded, the one she had frantically tried to avoid. But hearing it spoken aloud was like a physical blow. She stared blankly, her mind struggling to process the finality of it. You will be paid for any accrued vacation time, Ms. Albright continued, and information regarding your Cobra health insurance continuation will be sent to your home address. You will be escorted from the premises once this hearing is concluded. Brenda finally broke. Sobs racked her body, harsh and uncontrolled. No. Please, you can't. I have a mortgage. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. I swear. Eleanor Vance spoke for the first time. Her voice quiet, but carrying undeniable authority. Miss Jenkins, your apologies now, while perhaps heartfelt in your distress, come far too late. You had 15 years of opportunities to modify your behavior, to heed the warnings, to treat all passengers with dignity. You had countless chances to be the kind of employee Global Skyways values. You chose not to. The incident with my daughter was deplorable, but it served as the necessary catalyst to bring a long overdue accountability. She leaned forward slightly. What you need to understand, Brenda, is that this isn't just about one insulted passenger, or even one falsified document. It's about the trust that thousands of people place in our airline every single day. Trust that our employees will be professional, fair, and respectful. You violated that trust profoundly and repeatedly. There are consequences for such actions. This is one of them. Frank gently put a hand on Brenda's arm, trying to calm her. There was nothing more he could do. The decision was made. The hard karma didn't stop with her termination. As per company policy regarding termination for gross misconduct, especially involving falsification of credentials, Brenda would not be eligible for any severance package beyond her legally mandated dues. Her record within the airline industry would also be flagged, making it incredibly difficult for her to find employment with another reputable airline in a customer-facing role, or likely any role given the circumstances of her dismissal. The world of aviation was smaller than many realized, and news of such a high-profile firing, especially one involving a VP, would travel. In the weeks that followed, Brenda's life unraveled with brutal efficiency. The loss of income meant she quickly fell behind on her mortgage payments. The shame of her firing made her a recluse. Friends she thought she had, particularly those from work, became distant. The casual power she had wielded at the gate, the power to make or break someone's travel day with a sneer or a smile, was gone. Now she was powerless facing the stark reality of her choices. She was forced to sell her small condo in a rapidly declining market to avoid foreclosure, moving into a cramped, depressing rental apartment. Job hunting was a nightmare. Background checks revealed her termination from Global Skyways, and few employers were willing to take a chance on someone fired for gross misconduct and resume fraud. The minor complaints that Mr. Davies had once dismissed had become the epitaph of her career. The karma extended subtly to those who had enabled her. Mr. Alan Davies, the duty shift manager, received a formal written warning for his lax oversight and failure to escalate Brenda's pattern of behavior. He was mandated to undergo intensive management retraining, and his career progression at Global Skyways was significantly stalled. Ms. Carmichael, his supervisor, also faced scrutiny, leading to a company-wide review of how mid-level managers handled and reported disciplinary issues. The shockwaves of Brenda's actions were forcing a much-needed systemic cleanse. Eleanor Vance ensured that the changes were not just punitive, but also preventative. New immersive DEI training modules were developed, focusing on unconscious bias and respectful customer interaction. The complaint system was overhauled to ensure that red flags were escalated appropriately and swiftly. Anonymous reporting channels for employees to voice concerns about colleagues' conduct without fear of reprisal were strengthened. The Brenda Jenkins incident, as it became known internally though never publicly by that name, became a case study in training seminars about what not to do and how the system must respond. Keisha, finishing her summer program in London, with honours heard updates from her mother. She felt a strange mix of emotions. There was no joy in Brenda's downfall, but there was a sense of justice, a confirmation that such blatant prejudice couldn't go unchecked. Her experience, though initially deeply painful, had inadvertently sparked a positive change within a massive corporation. Brenda's hard karma was not a single dramatic event, but a slow, grinding erosion of the life she had known, a direct consequence of years of unchecked arrogance and a single pivotal act of cruelty. The laughter she had aimed at Keisha Washington had echoed back, amplified to shatter her own world. She had learned in the harshest way possible that profiles and assumptions were dangerous things, and that sometimes the young woman you try to belittle holds a connection to a power that can and will hold you accountable. Months later, Keisha Washington returned to Los Angeles, not just with academic accolades from her London program, but with a newfound sense of perspective. The incident at LAX, once a burning ember of humiliation, had cooled into a scar, a reminder of a painful experience, but also of strength, both her own and her mother's. She found she was less intimidated by challenging situations, more willing to speak up, not just for herself, but for others she saw being marginalized. The experience hadn't broken her. It had, in an unexpected way, forged her. Dr. Eleanor Vance watched her daughter with pride. Keisha was channeling her intelligence and newfound voice into advocacy, even starting a small online forum for young people of color to share their experiences and strategies for navigating prejudiced encounters in various sectors from travel to academia to the workplace. The forum named Phoenix Rising was a nod to rising from the ashes of negativity. Within Global Skyways, the Gate 42B initiative, as it was unofficially dubbed by those in the know, had resulted in tangible changes. Employee satisfaction surveys began to show slight upticks in morale, particularly among staff who felt more empowered by the new reporting systems and the visible commitment to DEI. Customer complaints related to discriminatory behavior saw a statistically significant decrease over the following year. The training programs, which used anonymized elements of Keisha's experience as a core scenario, were proving effective in fostering empathy and awareness among customer-facing staff. Mark Peterson, the LAX station director, and Maria Carmichael, the operations supervisor, both became more diligent and proactive leaders, understanding that turning a blind eye to minor issues could cultivate a toxic culture with major repercussions. Alan Davies, humbled and retrained, eventually became a more empathetic and effective manager, though his peers knew his career had hit a ceiling. As for Brenda Jenkins, her life remained a cautionary tale. Stripped of her career and the status she had so clearly abused, she drifted into a series of low-paying temporary jobs, none of which lasted. The comfortable life she'd taken for granted was gone, replaced by a daily struggle. The consequences of her actions were not fleeting. They were a permanent alteration of her life's trajectory. Her story served as a stark reminder within the airline industry, albeit usually spoken in hushed tones, of how quickly a career built on a shaky foundation of deceit and fueled by prejudice could collapse. Eleanor Vance never set out to destroy Brenda Jenkins. Her goal was to protect her daughter and to rectify a systemic wrong within the organization she helped lead. The severity of Brenda's downfall was ultimately a product of Brenda's own repeated choices. Eleanor continued her work driven by a renewed commitment to making Global Skyways not just a profitable airline, but an equitable and respectful one. She often shared in carefully selected leadership forums the lessons learned that one person's voice can spark significant change, that leadership means tackling uncomfortable truths, and that a company's greatest asset is its integrity. Keisha, looking back, understood that her ordeal was unfortunately not unique. But the outcome, the swift accountability, the systemic changes, that was less common. It had taken a confluence of factors, her own resilience, her mother's position and unwavering support, and a corporate structure that when pushed was capable of reform. She continued to build her Phoenix Rising platform, sharing not just stories of injustice, but also stories of triumph, resilience, and strategies for creating change. Her first-class ticket to London had been more than just a flight. It had been an entry into a much larger journey, one that was shaping her into a leader in her own right. The laughter of a gate agent had tried to diminish her, but in the end, it had only amplified her voice and illuminated a path for others. The real name that echoed through the story, LAX, remained a bustling hub of humanity, a place of departures and arrivals of hellos and goodbyes. And for Global Skyways, it was a place that now held a potent memory, a reminder that every passenger, every person deserved to be seen, respected, and treated with dignity regardless of what profile others might try to impose on them. The echoes of that day at Gate 42B continued to shape a better, more conscious airline. And that folks is how a moment of ugly discrimination turned into a powerful lesson in accountability, thanks to one brave young woman and a mother who wasn't afraid to wield her power for justice. Keisha's story is a testament to standing firm in your truth, even when faced with blatant disrespect. Brenda's downfall. A stark reminder that karma, especially when you're mistreating others, has a funny way of circling back, hard. What did you think of Brenda's karma? Was it too harsh or exactly what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in standing up against injustice, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with your friends, and definitely hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next dose of dramatic storytelling and real-life lessons. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind, be aware, and never underestimate anyone.